What's up, y'all? It's Big Bro back at you one more time again, man, with another story. I want to thank everybody out there who's liking and sharing and commenting, man. I appreciate y'all, man, for rocking with your boy. But I wanted to rap to y'all real quick about, you know what I mean, just how we take our losses and shit and stuff like that. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, as long as we able to still come here and speak to each other, we still able to see, we still able to see our family, we free, we still alive. You know what I mean? A lot of this materialistic stuff, we can just let it go. And there's a couple times when I took an L and I wanted to share that with y'all, man. Now, the first one was back in the early 2000s when back when we used to rock long jerseys, long t-shirts, baggy jeans, man. And this is back when if I wasn't chilling out Randallstown or around Liberty Heights, I'd be kicking it around Rogers and Wabash with my homeboy Tony. When I went around there, Tony, he used to tell me about how him and all his homeboys, they used to rock long black t-shirts down to their knees. And you know what I mean? And that was a representation of they don't bang with the dudes across the tracks up in the Park Heights because they used to rock all long white t-shirts. Ignorant, right? And first thing I did was went to the beauty supply store and got me a long black t-shirt because that was my man's. You know what I mean? So fast forward to tape. One of these nights, right? Like we kicking around there hard, I'm gonna tell y'all, you know what I mean? There was some thorough dudes I was around there too, you know what I mean? We was all rocking together. It was the one dude, Rel, you know what I mean? He used to go around this town with me. He was a thorough dude. And then it was a couple of them, but like some of the main head busters up there was like one of my homeboys, Brian too. When I first met I ain't gonna lie, like he had, his face like was like permanently mangled. It was crazy. It almost looked like it was like I thought like he got caught in a fire or something. You know what I mean? When I first met him, cause he, you know what I mean? It was like this. You know what I mean? It was just mangled, and it was just like scarring and like tissue was just, it was kind of messed up. You know what I mean? No pun intended. Much respect to the brother, man. I got mad respect for you, but for real, his face was kind of furred. And come to find out, when he was younger, his father, he ended up doing something bad, and his father pistol whipped him and permanently messed his face up. It was crazy, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, he was a thorough dude too. So we used to all rock long black t-shirts. And one of these nights, me and my homeboy Tony went all the way out Owens Mills, caught the train out there, and we copped some long authentic jerseys. This is back when I had the all green with the blue striped up Dallas Mavericks Michael Finley jersey. That joint ran me about $275, you know, back in the day. And I ain't had no job, you know what I mean? So this was all allowance money, you know what I mean? I remember I copped the Dallas Mavericks Michael Finley jersey, all green joint. And my man Tony, he had the New York Nets. He had the Jason Kidd joint. He had the Nets Jason Kidd joint, all white. So we ended up getting some jerseys. We fresh, you know what I mean? I had a long blue shirt underneath of the jersey, you know what I mean? We out there chopping it up. We done booked some girls, you know what I mean? So we catching the train from Owens Mills back down Rogers. We come back down. Me and him, we linked up with the dude Brian and with some other dudes. The dude Rel, he wasn't there this time. But we linked up with the dude Brian and some other dudes, and at the time, my man Brian, he was jamming some grass. So we walking from the train station, and we coming down Rogers, and we hit right at that corner. Now, right across the street, you will see you gotta go deep into the block where we used to kick it at. Right on that corner, Wabash is kind of a main street, and it was just a group. It was like a good 12. It was a group of 12 dudes with long white t-shirts on, and they just like, yo, what's up, yo? You know what I mean? And we looking like, yo, what's up? You know, it was only like we only like 5 deep. We're only like 5 deep. I remember it was me, Tony, Brian, and 2 other dudes. I can't remember their name, yo, but they, you know what I mean? I can't remember, man. But it was like 5 of us, you know what I mean? And so, like, I think, like, to kind of break the ice a little bit, Brian, he was trying to see, he was like, yo, I got some grass out, you know what I mean? I got some grass. But low key, we was kind of looking like, yo, you know what I mean? Like I'm looking like, yo, ain't that y'all enemy? You know what I mean? Ain't that our enemy? You know what I mean? So I'm looking like, yo, you know, we outnumbered. You know what I mean? But ain't nobody running. But we kind of was looking like, yo, like who was that? You know what I mean? Like what they want? You know what I mean? And we looking. So that's when we like, man, forget, yo, let's go over there, yo. We just gonna go over there, jam off some grass to the dudes and keep it pushing. Went over there, my man Brian, he ended up talking to the dude, was like, yo, you know what I mean? I got some grass, what up? Got some grass. One of the dudes, he like, man, let me see that. You know what I mean? So we get to walking down the block a little bit. And if you know Baltimore, right there on that block right there, it's like some little houses right there. So we kind of walking like right in between. It's like a little pocket of houses, then another street, and then you got the other blocks that looks like regular, like Baltimore hoods behind that. But it's like a little corner of it looked like a little county right there. I ain't gonna lie, of like little blocks of houses. So we end up walking through these little blocks of houses, and we walking towards where we be hanging at. So we walking through there and we walking up the street a little bit, but the dudes they with us, they got kind of surrounding us for real, and they was older. This back when I was only like, I was only like 14. I ain't gonna lie. I was like 14. You know what I mean? So these dudes, they looking every bit of 18 and 21 and 20, all that. You know what I mean? But they got on the long white t-shirts, and as we walking, I see one of the dudes, he whip out the on my man Brian. You know what I mean? He up there talking, he's just like, yo.
Hey nigga, give up the car right now.
That's when one of the dudes, he whip out a blade on me and Tony. Me and Tony, we stand right beside each other, we looking, and that's when he like, yo, you know what I mean, what y'all got, yo, what you got in your pockets, yo? My man Tony, I ain't gonna lie, man, if you ever see this video, I apologize, but he went all the way down to his knees, picked up that jersey, was like, shh, and started going in his pockets. I'm procrastinating, I'm acting like, yo, you know what I mean, huh? You know what I mean, I'm acting like, yo, like what you want? I'm like, yo, I ain't got nothing, yo, you know what I mean, because I had to go and do the same thing. I'm like, yo, I ain't got nothing, yo. He like, you ain't got nothing. Man, I think I had like $7 on me. But at the time, it wasn't about the money. You know what I mean? It was just about like the principle about, you know what I mean? Just I ain't want nobody taking nothing from me. You know what I mean? I felt disrespected. I felt like I felt like this knife right here wasn't gonna kill me. This is back when I was 14. I ain't never heard about nobody really getting stabbed to death with a knife, especially the size knife he had. It was only like this small for real. The gun was about 7 feet that way, you know what I mean? And they wasn't even like worried about us. But the dude pulled out a knife and he didn't even look like he was like ready to use it for real. So I'm up there looking like, yo, I ain't got nothing. You know what I mean? I was just looking like I ain't got nothing. I was this close. I was about to just be like, yo, here, take this $7. But as I'm picking up my jersey, I'm like, yo, I ain't got nothing, yo. I'm tapping my pockets like I ain't got nothing. That's when we see, for some reason, I don't know what it was just God, but 2 vehicles pulled up and the dudes, they all looked, and that's when they was like, hey, you know what I mean, in the vehicle, and that's when all the dudes in the white t-shirts, all of them, they just broke up the street, up the block. They just dipped, they just bounced. And that's when come to find out, it was my man Tony father and my mother and father, you know what I mean, right behind them. They riding around looking for us, you know what I mean? Right now, I think it's like 11 o'clock at night. So they pull up and they like, hey. So, you know what I mean, me and Tony, we like, yo, you know, we see Brian and the other 2 dudes, we like, yo, you know what I mean, I'm gonna be right back, yo. We get in the car, we like, hey, get them. Like, yo, they just robbed us. They just tried to rob us. So we get in the car, my man Tony and his father, they skirted off and hit the corner. My parents, they driving kind of slow. They like, you all right? You know what I mean? They just talking to me like, you all right? You good? I'm like, man, I'm good. But, you know what I mean? They just tried to rob us. Like, that was crazy for real. And so they like, yeah, you know what I mean? And so we ride around the corner and they just like, yeah, you know, my mother and father, they questioning me and everything. They're like, man, what y'all was doing? You know what I mean? You out here wearing your jerseys and stuff like that. Like, what you got on that expensive? My mother, she kind of leaned on me. She like,
you got on that expensive jersey and now you up here getting robbed. What you doing getting robbed?
You know what I mean? I'm just looking like, man, they had a gun. So, but as we up there talking, I'm getting fussed out. We driving up the block, not even that fast. We hit the block, and that's when we about to make the left, and we see my man Tony, Tony's father. We see him in the middle of the street, and he like, hey, you know what I mean? So we pull over in front of his truck, and that's when we pull over in front of his truck, and he come to my father's side. My father, how about the car? He like, yeah, well, like, what's going on? And then I hear them whispering like, yo, and that's when my father, he like, hey, come in real quick, and I hop out the car. I go around the car and I come in the street and I go to his truck, And that's when he was like, hey, he was like, that's one of the dudes that robbed you. And I looked in the back seat, and it was one of the dudes that robbed us. It was the short dude. And that's when my man Tony, he outside the car, he just like, yeah, you know what I mean? That was him. And we ain't do nothing because the dude, he's in the car, he's trying to make the scene. He's saying that, man, they was up there selling weed and they was trying to sell us drugs and stuff like that. And, you know, and they was smoking weed and he was just putting all this, he was just putting it on us like, man, we was trying to sell them this and sell them that. And we just looking like, nah, like, you know what I mean? He was trying to rob us. Like, he was rolling with the dudes that had the gun. I'm up there trying to fight him. I'm like, man, let me get him. You know what I mean? Like, because like, now that I'm older and I think about it, I'm like, damn, how did his father catch one of the dudes and he's just got him in the back seat sitting there like scared. You know what I mean? Then I'm looking around like, where the rest of them at? Because I know one of them had a gun. So the dude, so I tried to get at him. My father, he ended up telling me just get back in the car. And so I get back in the car. My mom, she telling me just relax. My mom, she telling me, you know what I mean, just chill, and I gotta just be grateful that I got away with my life. You know what I mean? And they came back in there and they start questioning us, like, man, was y'all smoking weed and all that? Of course, I'm denying it. But they lectured me. At the end of the day, yeah, they ended up letting the dude go. You know what I mean? And just, you know what I mean, just told his ass, I guess told him stay out of trouble. I don't know what he told him. But I know my man Tony was mad because he wanted to get at him. I wanted to get at him. But at the end of the day, you know what I mean, we drove off away from there, and I was just happy that I got away with my life and my jersey and my $7. You know what I mean? But yeah, and it was another time when I'm coming from Ramstown and I'm kicking it with my man Emmanuel, you know what I mean? Big dark-skinned dude, you know what I mean? A lot of people know when I be kicking it with big tall, swole African dude, they call him Quay. You know what I mean? So me and Quay, we kicking it up Liberty Heights and Gwenoke. Right up there on the golf course. We kicking it up there, getting wet, smoking, everything. You know what I mean? We kicking it up there with my homeboy Ryan. So we kicking it up there all day. So right now it's probably like 1 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? So he like, yo, you know what I mean? Like we like, yo, I'm like, yo, bounce, yo. But tell my man Ryan about to be out. This before we wasn't even driving. Right now I'm like 8. Right now I'm like 17. You know what I mean? So we ain't even driving. So I'm telling my man Ryan like, yo, you know what I mean? I'ma holler at you, yo, peace, yo, whatever. You know what I mean? So about to walk back to my crib. I lived off Liberty Heights and Garrison. So if you know Baltimore, if you coming from Liberty Heights and Gwenoke by the golf course, you can walk up Liberty Heights and walk down Liberty Heights to go to Garrison, and you would have to cut up Garrison to go to my block. Or you can take the shortcut and just walk right across the golf course and hit them back blocks. You know what I mean? Yeah, with the danger zone where all the hoods be at. You know what I mean? Them black box, them back blocks where, you know what I mean, you get stuck up at. You know what I mean? So I already know how it is. You know what I mean? So, but this Quay first time coming around there. So I'm telling him, I'm like, yo, you know what I mean? You want to walk up Liberty Heights, yo, and we'd walk down, and then we'd cut the Garrison. I was like, it's going to take us like a good maybe hour and 45 minutes to get to the crib. If we cut through these blocks, we can probably make it there within like an hour. You know what I mean? And he was like, man, forget that. He like, man, let's just cut through the blocks. I'm like, man, I ain't scared. So I'm like, I mean, it ain't about being scared. We ain't got no tones on us or nothing. I'm like, yo, we walk through here, yo, you mess around and get robbed, yo. You know what I mean? He just like, yo, forget that, man, but we good. So I'm like, all right. I'm like, all right, this what it is. So we walking through there, right as we walking through, soon as we get across the golf course, soon as we hit that one back block, I forget what school that is. I think that school, damn, I forget what school that is. But we just see a bunch of dudes, but the school is kind of like on a hill. And we just see a crowd of people jump off the bleachers off that hill as we walk, and they just come running down the hill. We looking like, shh. We just turn around like, shh. We like, yo, you know what I mean? We just talk to each other like, yo, you know what I mean? If they try something like, yo, you know what I mean? We ain't having it. And that's when my man, he had a CD player. I just seen him start tucking the CD player, and he started taking his earplug, taking his headphones off, and he tucked them underneath his shirt. I'm looking like, yo, like you already tucking stuff. Ain't had no chain to tuck, but he tucking his damn CD player and headphones. So I'm looking like, yo, you know what I mean? Like, yo, you know what I mean? Just, you know what I mean? They got a gun or something, yo. We just gonna have to get out of there, yo. We just gonna have to run something, yo. You know what I mean? So we just walking. And Quavo, he just like, man, we good. I'm like, nigga, how we good? You tucking stuff. So the dude, so we walking straight. Next thing you know, I just hear somebody hopping the fence. We hear, they hopping the fence. So that's when I already knew. As we walking. I look to my left. I see a dude, he's smiling, you know what I mean, with his hands in his pocket, he's smiling. And then behind him, he just got a whole crowd full of dudes. It's just me and Quavo. They like, it's like, I ain't gonna lie, it was like 9 of them. It was like 9 of them, and they had a stud with them, you know what I mean? So we up there, we end up walking, and that's when the dudes, they like, yo, you know what I mean, where y'all from, yo, you know what I mean, where y'all from? So that's when I'm like, man, I'm from around Garrison, from around Gwinnett. I'm like, man, what's up? So that's when they like, oh yeah, they asked my man Quavo, they like, yo, where you from, yo? You know what I mean? So he started telling them like, oh, I'm from Randallstown, you know what I mean? So that was bad idea, I ain't gonna lie. As soon as he said Randallstown, they start trying them. They just like, oh yeah, they like, yo, what you got in your pockets, yo? So that's when I turn around, I'm standing there, I'm like, yo, you know what I mean? So that's when one of the dudes, he come up to me, he just like, yo, what's up? He like, yo, where you from, yo? I'm like, yo, I'm from around here, you know what I mean? I'm from Garrison, around the block though. So that's when they like, oh, why, you know what I mean? That's when he like, yo, what you got? I'm looking like, man, I ain't got nothing. That's when the girl, she ends up trying to run Quavo pockets. Quavo, he ends up backing up. He just like, nah, like, don't do that. So one of the dudes, he ended up mushing. Like, he mushed the shit out of him. Like, yo, so he mushed him, and that's when the girl ended up stealing him, punched him, and Quavo, he got up out of there. So that's when as he gets up out of there, he runs that way. The girl and the dude, they behind me. I got this one tall dude in front of me, and that's when there was a bunch of dudes. They wasn't even really like kind of with it, but they was just like laughing and all this stuff. So ain't nobody had no gun, but the dude that punched Quavo, he was acting like he had one in his pocket. You know what I mean? But I ain't see it. But he act like he had one in his pocket. That's why when he was walking and he was smiling, he had that one hand in his pocket. And he started turning around just like, yo, you know what I mean? He was acting like he had that. But I ain't see one. But he ended up stealing my man's, which I didn't think was just going to let somebody steal him like that. But he let him steal him, and he got up out of there and left me. I ain't going to lie. You see this, you ran. You know what I mean? You ran, got up out of there. So I'm standing there, so I'm just like, yo, you know what I mean? So the dude, he like, yo, what you got, yo? You know what I mean? I'm like, man, I ain't gonna lie. I went in my pockets. I was like, yo, I think I had like $11. I was like, yeah, I got this. He like, yo, that's it. And that's when the dude, he turned around. As soon as I gave him the money, the dude turned around. I broke. I ain't gonna lie. And I got up out of there too. Dudes ain't even chasing me, but I got up out of there. Cut up. Quavo, he ran towards Liberty Heights. I ran the same way, went up Liberty Heights. As I'm going up there, I'm like, yo, you know what I mean? I'm kind of heated. I'm like, yo, let's go to my other homeboy house. Yo, he live a few houses down. We can holler at his brother. Yo, his brother, he was a thorough dude. We ended up going to his crib. That's my other homeboy, Dark Skin Ryan. We ended up going to his crib, knocking on the door and nobody answered. Kind of glad ain't nobody answered, because if his brother came out there, man, I probably wouldn't even be here today. You know what I mean? Word up, you know what I mean? We probably would have went back and laid something. But he ended up not answering the door. Me and Quavo, you know what I mean? I told him, I was like, yo, these back blocks on Liberty Heights, man, sometimes, you know what I mean, you might get caught slipping, you know what I mean? And the one time where I just felt that, I was like, yo, you know what I mean? It's late. It's just you and I, you know what I mean? Like, it can get crazy. And sure enough, man, we dude got me for my $11, you know what I mean? And Quavo, he got you know what I mean? He got a swollen jaw for that. But at the end of the day, we made it out of there with our lives. You know what I mean? That's the most important part about it. You know what I mean? A lot, you know what I mean? In these situations, I was willing to keep $11. I wanted to save my $7. But it really was about the disrespect. You know what I mean? I ain't want nobody taking nothing from me. And also, I ain't want to be walking around here and people looking like, yeah, that's the dude that I robbed. That's the dude that I took something from. I ain't want to have that type of label. So, but I made it up out of there. And there was another time, God bless this situation, because I was with my brother L, and he from Randallstown for real. So me and him, we kicking it up Liberty Heights and Gwendolyn, and then we about to catch the M1 back out Randallstown. I think this back when we like, I think this like right when we about like 20. Nah, only because I wasn't even drive. Nah. Yeah, I think I was like 18 then too. You know what I mean? So we about to catch the M1 back out Randallstown. It's like 12 o'clock at night. Nah, it's like 11 o'clock at night. And we walking past, we right up there by Liberty Heights and Gwendolyn. We walking past 4Gs and everything. And I was telling them, I'm like, yo, you know what I mean, this block right here, Liberty Heights and Gwendolyn, I was like, this is where we be kicking it at. But as soon as you walk up a little bit right by stop 1, that's why dudes be beefing with them dudes right there. You know what I mean? I'm trying to tell you, it's just like O Block, you know what I mean? 64th and 63rd. It's right there. You know what I mean? All you gotta do is walk 1 block up, man. I ain't gonna lie, yo, they get the clapping at my homies from Liberty Heights and Gwendolyn. So we ended up walking that way, you know what I mean? About to go to the bus stop. So as we going to the bus stop, we see like a good 10 dudes as well. 10 dudes, they like, yo, they across the street, but they up a little bit. They like, yo. So that's when I was like, to tell my brother L, I'm like, yo, you know what I mean? You ready? It's on. I'm like, yo, I told you, yo, it's on. So he just looking like, oh, shit. He looking like, man, it's on. You know what I mean? I pull out a knife. This one I had a long flight jacket on. So you couldn't even see my hands, but I pulled a knife out and I had it cuffed in my sleeve. You know what I mean? So I'm walking and they like 10 deep. You know what I mean? They like, yo. They're like, what's up, yo? You know what I mean? They coming across the street real aggressive. One of the dudes behind them, he had a big long freaking pitchfork. You know what I mean? He had a big long pitchfork and he walking with it. You know what I mean? And that's when as they walking, me and my brother L, we walking, and we looking like, yo, we looking at him, we just looking like, you know what I mean? We ain't running, but we wasn't being aggressive neither. But we walking, and that's when one of the dudes like, Dre. That's when I'm like, you know, my eyes bad, so I'm like, who that? You know what I mean? He like, yo, what's up, yo? He like, boy. He like, man, y'all about to get murked out here, yo. That's when I'm looking like, oh, you know what I mean? That's my little man, you know what I mean? Come to find out, it's my little homie dead, you know what I mean? He rolling around with his little crew. They walking up into enemy's territory, I don't know, probably looking for some heads to bust. And then, you know what I mean? They were just on demon time. They like 10 deep walking around with gats, knives, a pitchfork and everything. He just like, yo, you know what I mean? Like, man, y'all about to get got, man. What it is, you know what I mean? I'm giving him that. I'm like, yo, what's up, yo? You know what I mean? It's my bro. We about to go back out around this town, man, and just kick it. You know what I mean? He looked, oh, all right, you know what I mean? We chopped it up for a little bit, and then we got up out of there. You know what I mean? And that was just another time when, you know what I mean, just walking and, you know what I mean, through these Baltimore streets at nighttime and just being any, you know what I mean, regardless of wherever you at, you really just gotta know how to keep your composure. You gotta really be on your feet and thinking about what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, who knows? Like, if I'd have ran, you know what I mean? But if it was them, they knew it was us. They knew it was me. You know what I mean? But a lot of times, you know what I mean, just trying to fight and be willing to die for these materialistic things, it definitely ain't worth it. You know what I mean? And also rolling around robbing people, that ain't worth it neither, because at the same time, if we'd have had that, you know what I mean, who knows, you know what I mean, we probably would have been nervous and just head off, you know what I mean? But those were some crazy situations where I just learned, like, it ain't about just always about being tough, you know what I mean? Because everywhere we went, we thought we was tough. We always thought, like, man, ain't nothing gonna happen to us. But those times it did, you know what I mean? And there was plenty more times where I done got jumped and banked, and it got worse, you know what I mean? I done got shot, everything, you know what I mean? But I done made it out of there with my life, and that's the best part about it, you know what I mean? I have zero regrets. So if you somebody out there that's rolling around and you pissed off about what somebody just took from you and all that, it's cool. You can be pissed off for the moment, but at the same time, don't think that just judges who you are. That don't make you a coward. That don't make you a sucker. You know what I mean? You just got caught slipping, but you living to see another day. And that's the best thing about it, man. You still here with your family, still here with your friends, man. You can raise your seeds, you know what I mean? But they was some crazy situations right there. And I learned a lot from them, you know what I mean? They ain't break me, it made me. But yeah, I'm gonna come back at y'all with some more stories. But yeah, that's the 3 times. Well, 2 times I took a L, and the one time I almost took one, but I knew him. You know what I mean? But yeah, I come back at y'all with some more, man. When I get up, I'm gonna get up out of here, man. Peace and love.